Thank you. And good evening, everyone. We'll now reconvene this morning's hearing. Mr. McDermott, I'm going to ask you to please call the roll to take attendance. Members that are in attendance, please indicate that you are present. Add a couple of words to ensure that your image is displayed. Mr. McDermott, call the roll.
Councilmember Bass. Councilmember Brooks.
Present.
Councilmember Dom. Councilmember Gautier.
Present.
Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
Good evening, Council President, colleagues in Philadelphia. Present.
Councilmember Green.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, citizens of the city of Philadelphia. Good evening, excuse me, not good morning.
Councilmember Gim. Councilmember Heenan.
Good evening, Council President, and good evening, colleagues.
Councilmember Johnson.
Good evening, Council President. Good evening, colleagues.
Councilmember Jones.
Good evening, President. Good evening, colleagues. Good evening, Philadelphia.
Councilmember O'Neill. Councilmember O. Councilmember Parker. Councilmember Quinones Sanchez. Councilmember Squilla. Councilmember Thomas.
Good evening, Council President. Good evening, colleagues. I'm present.
All right, let's meet it. Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. Thank you. We'll now resume the public hearing and begin taking testimony from the public on the city's proposed budget. Before proceeding, however, I will lay out a few ground rules on how we will proceed with the public testimony this afternoon. We are here today to hear from you about the city's proposed operating and capital budgets and proposed tax revenue measures. Due to the COVID-19 emergency, we have implemented special procedures with respect to public comment, which were advertised, posted on council website, and sent out in a press release. Speakers interested in giving testimony were asked to call or email us by 3 p.m. yesterday so that we could take their technical steps necessary to provide an opportunity for public comment in a virtual environment. We also encourage everyone who asked to testify to submit written testimony to budget.hearings@phila.gov to ensure that their voice is part of the permanent public record. Any testimony submitted that way will be added to the record of this particular hearing to ensure that it is an opportunity for all of you to be heard. Certain ground rules have been established as follows. Your testimony should be about the city's proposed operating and capital budgets and proposed revenue measures. Our staff will call you in groups of 20 at a time. The first calls were made at approximately 5-ish. You will be asked to make sure that your phone is muted until it is your turn to speak. And once your name is called, please unmute your phone by pressing *6 on your phone. You will then have 2 minutes to speak. So we'll ask you to adjust your testimony to reflect the 2-minute limit. We have a significant volume of people testifying today, so we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity. So we will have a 2-minute limit today. Once you are asked to begin your testimony, a timer will be started. When there are 30 seconds remaining to your time, you will be reminded of this. Once your allotted time has passed, you will be asked to conclude your remarks. At that time, please mute your phone and stay on the line until all 20 people in your group have testified. After each group of 20 individuals has testified, we will take a short break allotted to the next group. The final group will consist of 10 persons. I would ask Mr. McDermott to please read the name of our first speaker.
Sarah Stewart.
Good afternoon, and please state your name for the record. Just proceed with your testimony.
It was not able to be reached.
Judy Nelson.
Good evening. I'll state your name for the record, and please proceed with your testimony.
Hello, my name is Judy Nelson. I am a former Parks and Recreation professional. I ran a strength-based, trauma-informed leadership program, which encompassed different conflict resolution programs, journaling programs, all using evidence-based practices in fun, using the arts, in fun, engaging programs. Ran a very highly successful team leadership program that had incredible outcomes, and I spoke up against problematic practices in the city and was recently punished. I spoke up, and I know what works in the city. I'm not the only one that knows what works, but I have a master's degree in clinical social work, a certification in psychodrama sociometry and group psychotherapy, and ongoing over the course of 20 years of professional learning and growing. So it's not something I'm ever going to stop learning about. Rampant nepotism is allowed, and what happens is city resources go to people who work in the city. So it goes to self, friends, and family, leaving little for the greater good, and a culture that employees need to stay in their lane, which protects those who harm. I sat in the head lawyer's office of the city with the nepotism policy in my lap, explaining how poor neighborhoods don't even have a swing set after over 16 years of Mike DeBergensis' leadership. And I was told aloud. And I said he hired his wife, his son, his godson's wife. My knees are trembling. I was told aloud, aloud, aloud. So when nepotism and when people are allowed to use city money and not for the greater good, but for themselves, their friends, and their family, it causes a culture problem and has caused a culture problem in the city of Philadelphia as long as I have worked there, which is over 20 years. Philadelphia heads city departments, like Parks and Rec, are allowed to use city resources when they do something unethical. If they handle something unethical for the EEOC and the department needs to pay for it, it's kept secret and covert. And I believe that anytime there's a finding for the EEOC, the name can be left out. But the city, the greater good, has a right to know that who's being paid to represent them. If they're making ethical breaches, the public has a right to know to stop the ongoing harm. I've been to many Department of Behavioral Health and school district hearings that literally teach harm. Let me say that again. Department of Behavioral Health and school district trainings that are teaching harm. As one example, I was in a training co-sponsored by the school district and DBH. And the trainer, so let me explain, hundreds of people in an audience with a trainer explaining that she saw a little boy touch a little girl's vagina. The little girl hit the boy, he moved on to another little girl. And I was the only one in the room that raised my hand, and I said, I'm sorry, you didn't tell us how you stopped the harm. And she said, I didn't stop the harm. It's too hard to reschedule tests. I told the teacher later what the boy was wearing.
All right, ma'am. I want you to kind of like round it up because your time is. It sounds like a long story. Can you just we get your gist?
You get my gist that your funds are contributing to harming children.
Right.
Your supervision over city departments are harming children. I have examples, but you don't want the examples?
Can you do us a favor? Because I'm very concerned about what you're talking about.
Let me cut you off. because BH10 warns people before their Trauma 101 workshops. They say to people who they don't know how healthy they are, they say, what we're going to show you, a tape, is going to be very upsetting, but we wanted to warn you.
Okay.
I promise you, no trauma training needs to warn somebody that something is going to be upsetting. In community programs, it should be building resilience.
Okay,
And
ma'am.
I was in a room when somebody disassociated. Okay,
All
so
right,
I'll
ma'am,
listen
you
to
got
what...
it. Yeah, you can't just go on and on. All right, look, we'll reach back out to you. Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it.
Who are you and who will...
I'm the council president. Thank you. Next person.
Erica Guadalupe Nunez.
Good evening. Please state your name for the record. Proceed with your testimony.
She's not scheduled for this hearing. The next name we have is Brunson.
Thank you. State the name. What's the name again?
Jamie J. Brunson.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Please just proceed with your testimony.
Good evening, Mr. President and members of City Council. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Jamie J. Brunson, and I serve as the Executive Director of First Person Arts. I'm also the Secretary of the Board of the Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance. Today, you've heard testimony on the importance of funding health, children and families, human services, the library, parks and recreation. The arts and cultural community serves and supports all of these. I testify before City Council today with a very clear ask. Please fully restore the cultural fund to its pre-pandemic budget level of $3.14 million and consider expanding that budget to $5 million in support of the essential social impact programming and employment opportunities for Philadelphians that its grantees deliver across our great city. Before PCF's budget was cut last year, it granted $2.9 million to 349 community arts organizations in 2019. These funds have often fueled innovative and impactful partnerships between arts and cultural organizations and the city of Philadelphia. One such partnership is between my organization, First Person Arts, and the Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services around resilience. For 6 years, we've collaborated with them on their Engaging Males of Color initiative, which uses arts programming to destigmatize conversations about behavioral health among this group. This innovative partnership designs programs that also serve as a gateway for attendees to access wellness services. It's our joint effort to help build stronger, healthy communities through collaborative arts programming. This is an example of how arts and culture can work collaboratively and innovatively with city agencies to build this community. And during a time when rebuilding and strengthening our city is paramount, the arts and cultural community is vital to this work by delivering programs that connect, educate, and inform citizens and as employers of this city's workforce. First Person Arts' partnership with DBHIDS is just one example of the types of creative work that the Philadelphia Cultural Fund supports. Consider that pre-pandemic 60% of PCF grantees served pre-K and school-age children, while 47% had operating budgets of less than $150,000. Simply put, PCF provides authentic, culturally relevant arts and cultural opportunities for those Philadelphians who can best benefit from them. It moves the needle to help make us a better city. Leaving its funding 33% under pre-pandemic levels when the work of its grantees is needed now more than ever will not fulfill our greatest potential to rebuild. As a grantee and voice for our arts and cultural community and our neighbors who benefit from it, I humbly ask City Council to fully restore the Philadelphia Cultural Fund in the next budget cycle. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We appreciate it. Next witness.
Shane Riggins.
Good evening. State your name for the record. Please proceed with your testimony.
That person is not on the line. The next person we have listed is Shapiro.
Good evening. Just state your name for the record. Please proceed with your testimony.
Hi, I'm Stan Shapiro, and I'm testifying for Philly Neighborhood Networks and the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition. The city is now at a crossroads, having just elected a new president who explicitly rejected trickle-down economics. Our mayor has offered a budget founded on that very same philosophy. The president is right, and the mayor is wrong. This is not the time to be cutting taxes for big business on the basis that someday, in some way, those cuts will induce the rich to spread their windfall around to those who really need help. Why not cut out the middleman and just directly provide the help that's needed to those who have the need? In these budget hearings, members of council have identified clearly what is really called for, a vast expansion of programs that help the black and brown residents of our town who have borne the brunt of the pandemic. The administration responded by claiming that would require cutting other city services. But no, that is not true. The mayor has proposed well north of $300 million in tax cuts. That money is what should be used to fund the badly needed programs so many of you have appropriately called for. To be clear, corporate tax cuts do not promote economic growth or equity. If they did, Philadelphia, which has been steadily cutting taxes since the Rendell administration, would be the most prosperous city in the country. We all know the reality. It's the poorest big city in the country. The tax cuts proposed by the mayor, apart from being the wrong solution at the wrong time, something even more toward the undeserving wealthy than similar tax cuts did in the past. City Council exempted the first $100,000 of receipts from the business tax a few years ago. That means that 2/3 of all businesses in the city don't pay the tax, so the mayor's tax cut would do them absolutely no good. In terms of what business needs, there are ways to cut costs for small business instead of cutting taxes that they don't actually even pay. I'm happy to note that 12 members of this council co-sponsored Councilmember Green's legislation that would foster one of them, a Philadelphia public bank. One of the primary missions of the bank will be to cut lending costs to small neighborhood businesses and co-ops, thus letting these businesses keep their profits rather than pay the banker's tax, otherwise known as interest. An allocation of $750,000 toward the cost of an implementation study would go a long way to advancing the date that the bank can open for business and can start to help businesses in impacted communities. I want to thank the members of council for your time and attention and for your inspiring willingness to buck the conventional wisdom that there's no problem that massive tax cuts for the rich can't cure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate it.
Next person to testify is Lance Haver.
Good evening. State your name for the record. Please proceed with your testimony.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Lance Haver. Good evening, Council President. I intervened in the water rate case, and I'm cutting my testimony to 2 minutes, so please forgive if it's cut up. I was heartened to see that all City Council members went on record opposing it. I was happy to hear that during the water hearings yesterday with the Water Commissioners, you continued that position. Unfortunately, your position is now being undercut by the Public Advocate. After secret negotiations, the Public Advocate, without getting any input from council, from any civic group or any individual, has decided to support the Water Department's request for a $57 million rate increase. The terms of this settlement are so great that the Water Commissioner didn't announce it to you yesterday while he was testifying. That's how one-sided it is. The Water Department doesn't need a rate increase. That's what the Public Advocate's own expert witness said. There is literally millions of dollars that can be collected from the Recovery Act, from the investment in the infrastructure. Council President asked yesterday about who the water department contracts out with to read the meters. It's a multinational corporation, not headquartered in Philadelphia, but headquartered in Morrisville, North Carolina. It's not unionized, and maybe this will help you feel good. Their breakthrough civic statement on their webpage says they're opposed to slavery. The rate increase will not increase the number of people enrolled in the low-income plan. Right now, it's 3.8%. Of the 25% of the people living in poverty, the water department has only enrolled 3.8% of them in its TAP plan. What I'm asking council to do is, one, contact the public advocate and urge them to reject the settlement. They should not go behind council's back, behind the public's back, behind the civic group's back, behind community groups, and reach a settlement. And I'm also asking council to send the same letter that they sent to the water commissioner saying no rate increase, to the water rate board, so that the settlement is stopped. The water department goes after the recovery money, and the citizens of Philadelphia are saved from a massive rate increase. I'd be happy to answer any questions. There are a number of other points, but I recognize there are a lot of people waiting to testify. Thank you very much, council members and council president.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Haber. It's good hearing from you. As you notice, I referenced the accent. I thought it was a Texas accent, but now we clearly know that accent was from North Carolina. The phone call I made to the number that was given, they have the meter changed out. So, got a little thank you, and good to see you continuing to be deep into the fight for citizens of the city of Philadelphia. As this former,
that's very kind of you. But if I could get you to send that letter, that would be even better.
Yeah, we actually did send a letter, but we'll follow. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next person to testify is Marilyn Dyson.
Good evening. Just state your name for the record, and please proceed with your testimony. Good evening, Ms. Dyson.
Yes, this is Marilyn Dyson. I'm speaking on behalf of the Free Library of Philadelphia. I will try to get this in 2 minutes. I want to tell you about fiscal year 2019 with the Free Library, and then tell you about what the Friends of the Free Library want. In 2019, according to the annual report for the Free Library, there were 36,000 public programs attended by 750,000 people. The LEAP program helped 162,000 teenagers. These programs are the heart of the community. It's where people get together. It's how we communicate with each other and how we provide safe spaces for everybody. It is the heart of the community. Since then, there's also been staff reductions of almost 25%. In helping the Free Library, I have done a straw poll for what the people want in the community. Patrons want improved equipment in the branches. We want better furniture. We want better lighting. We want to make the libraries welcoming. We wanted them to be open, and we want protection. We want to build connections in our community. We want the organizations and the merchants to be part of the whole system. We believe that we are building the future generation and determining the values of teens and young people. We want to make them safe. The proposed budget for 2022 is $42 million. It is actually $3.6 million shorter than pre-pandemic. Why give us less money than we had before? We have higher goals and we want more. We want to have the $3,006 shortfall replaced. We want an additional $5 million for 6 days a week of library openings, and we want an additional $7 million for building materials and programs. All total, we want $15 million for the Free Library of Philadelphia. You have the capability of giving that to us and making the library once again the heart of the communities in Philadelphia. Thank you very much for your time and all the effort you were putting in today. It's been a long day for all of us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Next person to testify is Brett Bessler.
Hello, my name is Brett Bessler. I'm a shop steward for ASME DC 47, Local 2187, Recreation Leader 1 and Facility Supervisor in South Philadelphia. I want to thank City Council for providing this avenue today to express our thoughts on this year's proposed budget. When it comes to Philadelphia Parks and Recreation's proposed budget, I come to you today excited for the opportunity to view this department in a new way. In Philadelphia, 95% of citizens live within a 10-minute walk to a park, playground, or recreation center. PPR ranks third nationally in recreation centers per resident, but currently under this proposed budget, the city of Philadelphia will spend roughly just $50 per resident, while the national average is almost double that. To put it simply, Philadelphia Parks and Recreation system is absolutely massive, and under this proposed budget, the ability to operate this system in an equitable, inclusive, and efficient way to ensure high-quality programming and facilities will not be sustainable. But as I said earlier, I am excited because I believe that through this year's budget process, we have a significant opportunity to invest in our communities by utilizing our Parks and Recreation system in new ways, specifically when it comes to job creation. With an increase of funding of $12 million, only $6 million more than 2019 levels, PPR can increase staffing citywide to a minimum of 2 full-time employees at all centers, appropriately backfill vacant promotional positions, and increase part-time and seasonal employees, which are positions that are predominantly held by direct community members. I am pleased to hear members of council asking about pathways towards full-time work for seasonal employees. In this year's proposed budget, PPR will be able to bring back 1,400 seasonal positions. These seasonal and part-time employees play a significant role in helping shape our city's youth, but are not paid a living wage, provided no health insurance benefits, and currently have no pathway towards full-time work without a college degree. The city of Philadelphia should be an employer of opportunity, not one that keeps any employee uninsured and in poverty. The opportunity to obtain full-time work can and should be afforded to seasonal and part-time employees by way of an experience qualification. It is my belief that this aforementioned level of funding will be able to not only ensure safe, welcoming, and robust community spaces for the citizens of Philadelphia, but we can also create a sustainable pathway for all of the city's youth to one day obtain full-time union-represented positions with amazing health benefits and a pension within the recreation system. We owe it to our communities to have fully staffed recreation centers citywide, and we owe it to our youth to provide every opportunity to obtain full-time employment. I am hopeful that we will be able to establish that pathway beginning in fiscal year 22. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We appreciate it.
The next person to testify is Sunita Balaja.
Good evening. State your name for the record. Please proceed.
Sunita Balija. Greetings, Council. I am the children's librarian at Donna Tucci Library in Councilman Johnson's district in South Philadelphia. I'm a union member of DC 47. At huge risk to ourselves and our families, library staff have tirelessly served our communities throughout the pandemic. We've proved that the library is more than a physical building, as evidenced by booming statistics on virtual programming and services such as curbside pickup and mutual aid fairs. However, our patrons rely on our library spaces to access services that they cannot access elsewhere. Our children at Donna Tucci need services like LEAP, literacy enrichment after-school programming, which keep young people safe and constructively engaged. I came to Donna Tucci when they had been without a children's librarian for nearly a year. Prior to that, I worked at a North Philadelphia branch that had been without a children's librarian for nearly 2 years. Since 2009, the library has lost 33% of its staff. Just last year, 46% of total city layoffs were from the library, which lost 204 workers. 50% of those laid off were black, and 67% were women. The mayor's proposed budget leaves $3.6 million of cuts in place from before the pandemic and does not account for functional 5 or 6 day services. Let me be clear. Functional does not just mean an open door. Functional means consistent, stable, and full staffing with full-time library employees, not temporary seasonal staffers who are not paid a living wage or given health benefits, who have to deal with inconsistent, shifting schedules to fill huge gaps in staffing. Pre-pandemic, our library neighborhood staff was skeletal. Now, staff are seemingly erased from the view of our remaining frontline staff and from the view of the public. Last year's layoffs were unnecessary and harmful. These workers included all after-school leaders. They included all seasonal workers who were required to reapply for their jobs every year, causing delays in all hiring due to an ever-revolving mountain of rehiring paperwork. These workers must be rehired to permanent positions as city services are rebuilt. In closing, the cost of restoring full staffing to the library is much less than the price this city will pay if we are unable to provide functional service. There are no shortcuts when it comes to the care and education of all of our children, the future of Philadelphia. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony. We appreciate it.
The next person to testify is Mark Zachary.
Good evening. State your name for the record. Please proceed with your testimony.
Yes, this is Mark Zachary, and I kind of hear a general theme, and the theme that I'm getting is that this body has a complete lack of vision in terms of positioning the city for the recovery from the pandemic. I mean, most departments are completely underfunded. It doesn't matter which one you name, whether it's L&I, whether it's Parks and Rec, whether it's libraries. These departments are essential to the city. And in my mind, the city isn't even near the statutory debt limit. And you're also having federal money come in. So in my mind, you should be using this moment to go as large and as big as you can. And instead, what I hear is kind of like, oh, well, let's, make some hard choices and this and that. No. I mean, if you end up over budget, you guys will figure it out. Okay, that's your job to do that. So I really suggest that you start doing your job and repair the schools from top to bottom, abate the asbestos, abate the lead, repair the libraries, repair the park systems, hire local people to staff every park in the city to clean up trash and to make Philadelphia a generally better place to live. That's your job. And pretty much all I hear is excuses as to why it can't happen. And I would love to hear why it can't, So have a great day.
Next person to testify is Bridget Powell.
Good evening. This is Bridget Powell. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Good evening. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry. Proceed with your testimony.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to testify. My name is Bridget Powell, and I decided to volunteer at many groups in the city because of my love for children and families. I've met many of the city council members that are here tonight from the last 4 years due to my own family's experience with DHS. I want to say, as a school nurse, COVID's not going away, but I envy you and I support the use of Zoom to conduct business, even school. So my question is, why are the courts not fully utilizing the Zoom to have court sessions for these children? My niece needs her day in adoption court. She's been an orphan for 2.5 years, and DHS is just preventing her permanency. School 10 has been a nightmare with my family, and I'm asking you during this budget season to send a message to DHS and CUA that CUA must go and DHS must do a better job. How does DHS not get to follow state rules but still get funding? Siblings are not getting a visit because there's not an employee who can even provide 2 hours a month for siblings to see each other. They're requiring siblings to choose between school activities like basketball during the pandemic, which is very important to their normalcy, or see their sister. Why can't CUA and DHS find 2 hours a month in their budget to allow siblings to see each other that are in separate homes? I'm going on the record to say that DHS needs a major reform. My family records at DHS were altered, and I discovered them during transcripts, and I will be sending them over with my testimony.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yesterday, I was truly sad and disappointed to attend a memorial for Libby, who was in DHS care. Why was her picture not on the news as her being missing? This was a 13-year-old girl. All too often, children in DHS care do not get the attention that your child and my child gets, and they deserve better. Last year, it was Jimmy Mayo who was killed, and we didn't know anything about it until he was dead. Why does DHS get funding, but they're not providing the services for children? City Council, I'm asking you to send a message with your budget that CUA must go and DHS must be better. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We appreciate it.
The next person to testify is Dr. Lindsay Simon.
Good evening. State your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Dr. Lindsay Simon, and I am an Associate Medical Examiner for the City of Philadelphia. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight about the strain under which the Medical Examiner's Office finds itself. Since 2015, we have handled an ever-increasing caseload due in large part to fatalities from drug overdoses and gun violence. Our practice to date is to review all cases reported and examine all bodies received within 24 hours every day of the year. This is so that there will be minimal delay both in releasing the deceased to their loved ones and in assisting law enforcement when our expertise is needed to conduct their investigations. I believe we are at a point where this speed of service can no longer be provided when comparing our case volume to our staffing level. In 2020, we received over 7,000 reports of death that were handled by only 11 investigators. And these investigators not only handle these reports, they also confirm every identity of every decedent at our office, perform every scene investigation, and perform a number of other tasks. In 2020, our 10 autopsy technicians assisted in over 3,500 examinations, in addition to checking in and releasing these bodies and performing numerous other tasks. We currently only have 7 doctors working full-time to review over 7,000 case files, perform those over 3,000 autopsies, and issue those over 3,000 death certificates and reports. We simply do not have enough staff to provide the grieving families of Philadelphia the thorough and speedy exams of their loved ones that they deserve. I believe that without additional staffing, we will be forced to slow down our operations or worse, compromise the quality of care we provide to the deceased of Philadelphia and their families. I urge those assembled here to approve increases in the medical examiner's budget so that our office can hire more staff and do right by our city. I thank you all for your time and your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next person to testify is Owen Harrington Woodard.
Good evening. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. Mr. Woodard? Woodard. Woodard, Mr. McDermott, see if we can reconnect. Modesty.
Next name on the list is Ken Hurd.
Good evening, Mr. Hurd. Hello? Mr. Hurd? Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Just state your name for the record and please proceed with your testimony.
Excellent. I'm at 2125. My name's Kenneth Hurd. I'm representing the Move the Money to Human Needs Coalition. I'm the Philadelphia representative for that coalition. I'm also the treasurer here for the Philadelphia chapter of the National Writers Union. I will not take up a lot of your time. We will be submitting written recommendations regarding the 1033 program, which affects your city police department quite thoroughly. A lot of money is being spent through that program. We are requesting that it is terminated and that that money is moved to human needs. The people who have been testifying previous to this, sir, have been giving quite a bit of position to why we really need to move that money away from the police department. It is a military, United States military program, and there is a second program that bleeds our police department of a number of its resources, including, quietly as is kept, its actual budget. We'll be submitting in writing our recommendations around this. We do hope all of the elected representatives will be able to consider this, the ones that are absent as well, and we wish you adieu. We hope that we have enough time for other people to state their case. Over and out.
Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it.
The next person to testify is Nomi Tooch.
Good evening. Just state your name for the record. Proceed with your testimony.
Nomi Toich.
Please proceed.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Hi, my name is Nomi Toich, and I'm a clinical social worker and a resident of West Philadelphia. I'm a therapist serving individuals in the same community in which Walter Wallace Jr. was killed by police in the midst of a mental health crisis. I'm here today to stand up for the importance of non-police mental health crisis response services in our city. This is the only and best way to prevent another murder like what happened to Walter Wallace Jr. Police should not be responding to mental health crises. They're not equipped to deal with these situations, especially in communities of color where their presence is threatening and can be dangerous. The arrival of police leads to escalation and can result in injury or, as we all learned, even death of the person who is in distress. The focus of the police force is crime prevention and reduction, not promoting the health and wellness of people experiencing emotional distress. Police responding to mental health crises also contributes to the disproportionate incarceration of people with mental health diagnoses. For these reasons, I'm here today to argue that funding should be diverted from the co-responder model to further expand civilian mobile crisis units so that anyone experiencing a mental health crisis in Philadelphia can receive services from a clinical team, not law enforcement, in a timely way. Co-response is still a police response. Alternative response is more in line with best practice and will better serve our communities. I was very relieved to hear Dr. Bowen state this morning that the long-term goal is for civilians to respond to all mental health emergencies in our city. If co-response is meant to be an interim and short-term solution until the crisis teams are fully operational, it should not get a $6 million investment at this time. That money would be better spent on expanding the mobile teams quickly and effectively. Based on my experience as a social worker, I can tell you that for mobile crisis units to successfully serve Philadelphians, they need to be accessible via 911.
In the middle of a crisis, that is the number that most people call. The mobile crisis teams should consist of an experienced licensed clinician, a nurse, and a peer specialist. They should provide the individual in distress with transport and a warm handoff to increase access to good long-term care. I'm thrilled that DBH-IDS is ready to expand and improve the mobile crisis services here in Philly. The proposed mobile crisis expansion is cost-effective, and it will save the city a great deal of money in the short and long term. But most importantly, it will definitely save lives. Alternative responder programs are taking root all over the country. Philadelphians deserve this service now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony. We appreciate it.
The next person to testify is Nikki Grant, Esquire.
Good evening. Just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good evening, council members. My name is Nikki Grant. I'm the Policy Director of Office Coalition. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you especially to council members Kim, Brooke, and Gautier. I want to urge City Council to support DBH-IDS's plan to expand mobile crisis teams. The murder of Walter Wallace Jr. by Philadelphia police made it very clear that our city needs to end its reliance on law enforcement to do with many things, starting with mental health emergencies. When people are experiencing a mental health crisis, a police response is not appropriate, even if that cop has received additional training and even if that cop is accompanied by a mental health professional. We need mobile crisis teams to be dispatched to 911, as no one can be expected to recall its 10-digit phone number during an emergency. Philadelphia should join the many cities across the country who have figured out how to have a completely civilian response to mental health crises. Please consider diverting funding from the correspondent model to expanding mobile crisis teams even further. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We appreciate it.
The next person to testify is Chris Henderson.
Good evening. Just state your name for the record and please proceed with your testimony. Good evening.
I don't think they're on the line anymore.
Okay. Next caller. Next testimony.
The next person to testify is Rabbi Micah Weiss.
Good evening. Just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. Rabbi?
He's also not on the line. I think the next person we have in line is Jones.
Esther Jones.
Good evening. State your name for the record, please, and proceed with your testimony.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. State your name.
Okay, great. My name is Esther Jones. Good evening, esteemed members of City Council and members of the public. My name is Esther Jones, and I am a steward for DC 47, Local 2187, Parks and Recreation at McVeigh Recreation Center in District 5 in the Kensington neighborhood of Philadelphia. The Parks and Rec budget seems to be underfunded every year. I hope I can persuade you to make Parks and Rec a priority and urge you to convince Mayor Kenny to increase the budget. We have important programs at my center for residents, of which after-school programs, summer camps, and teen lounge are just a few. The programs we provide are free or very low cost to make sure that everyone in the community can have access to them. Our fantastic cheer program, the Kensington Ravens, provides young girls and teens valuable lessons in teamwork while learning new skills and bonding like a teen family from a young age right through high school, along the way winning championships and gaining a sense of pride in themselves and their community. McVeigh is on the list for the Rebuild program, which is a program meant to make improvements to recreation centers and libraries across the city. Why does McVeigh and other recreation centers in North and West Philadelphia have to wait to get on the Rebuild list to get things like a new roof or an HVAC system so we can have a thermostat to turn the heat down but not completely off? Why are there such stark differences between the conditions of a recreation center in Northeast Philadelphia and a recreation center in North Philadelphia or West Philadelphia? Why has the city spent so much money on improvements for FDR Park when we have an 80-year-old rec center that needs new roof, and other rec centers that are literally being held up by beams outside of the building. Please urge Mayor Kenny to increase the budget of Parks and Recreation and demand the money go to improvements for the centers that desperately need it. Centers should not have to wait for rebuilds to get money for regular maintenance. I implore City Council to keep pushing for Parks and Rec to have a bigger budget so we can keep providing these programs that I have mentioned. Rebuild funds should be used for fun things like adaptable play equipment and new murals that reflect the community, not maintenance that should have been done already. The Parks and Rec budget should be increased annually until every rec center has all its basic needs met, including staffing, structural improvements, and supplies. Investing in the rec centers means investing in the community. It's time to stop doing more with less and do more with more. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We appreciate it.
The next witness is Lynn Robinson.
Good evening. Hello. Can't hear you.
With the gas plant itself. However, we're not legally fighting the gas plant anymore. We don't need evidence because we're not.
Hello. Good
Have
evening.
we muted her because I'm not sure she's paying attention.
That actually the gas plant is more dangerous than we realize. So,
We do have Chris on the line.
Okay, let's proceed. We'll come back to the other person. Good evening. This states your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Chris Henderson. I'm the Executive Director of Amistad Law Project, and I'm a member of the Philadelphia Treatment Not Trauma Coalition. I've lived in Philadelphia for over a decade. I appreciated Council's questions of Dr. Bowen this morning, especially Council members Brooks, Gautier, and Gim. When people are experiencing a mental health crisis, a police response is not appropriate, even if that cop has received additional training, even if that cop is accompanied by a mental health professional. Philadelphians deserve an expansion of the mobile crisis unit. This morning, Dr. Bowen said it would take approximately 20 teams to be able to provide this care across the city. The current budget proposal includes funding for only 4 teams. Meanwhile, it also includes an expansion of the dangerous co-responder program. The federal guidelines for mental health crisis care, published by Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, state clearly that it is best practice for mental health first responders to respond without law enforcement accompaniment unless special circumstances warrant inclusion in order to support true justice system diversion. Instead of increasing funding to mobile crisis units, we are poised to further entrench the co-responder model. Philadelphians deserve better, and we can do better. Please divert funding from the co-responder model and increase funding to mobile crisis units. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it.
I previously called this name, but I've been told that Owen Harrington Woodard is now available.
Good evening. It states your name for the record and please proceed with your testimony.
Good evening. My name is Owen Harrington Woodard, and I'd like to thank Council, President, the members of the Council, and all the other citizens that have testified. I'm a resident of West Philadelphia in the 3rd District, and like a lot of other callers, I'd like to highlight my disappointment in this budget and in Council for not pursuing a more bold and bright-hearted trajectory for our city. It seems like we just want to scrape by with the bare minimum. I live right near Chestnut Street, and it's basically a 3-lane highway with no paint on it. And just the lack of infrastructure and well-being investment in our communities is really staggering and insulting. And I hear some promising work being discussed tonight, but I'd like to echo a lot of other callers in saying that it just doesn't sound like any of it's going to happen or like Council is really going to make any step forward. Thank you, and good evening.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We appreciate it.
The next witness is Jennifer Benich.
Good evening. State your name for the record and please proceed with your testimony.
She is not on the line. We can either go back to Ms. Robinson or go forward.
Let's go back. You got someone else on the line?
Is Lynn Robinson available?
Hello?
Yeah, good evening. Just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Okay, I'm going to state, okay, Lynn Robinson. I just have to tell this meeting to hold on. Hold on, because I'm testifying for City Council. Okay. All right, I'm testifying for Bill number 210322, the budget. And what I noticed in the budget plan is that basically it does continue business as usual in general. For example, you know, the criminal justice expenditures are many, many times what the school district is getting. The prisons alone get about 9/10 of the school's allotment. So I'm one of the people that wants to end cash bail and make probation not punitive. But since my orientation is environment, I'm looking at the health and happiness of the city and human survival in general, and the Office of Sustainability is like the one department that has a tremendous responsibility to guide the city towards systemic changes that address climate change, and it should also address environmental equity issues that impact health, but it can't. And the Office of Sustainability is at the bottom of the city's priorities, budget-wise. It's getting, I added up $2,104,090. That's just basically enough to greenwash the city. It's not even as much as the mural arts program gets. So I'm advocating for more money for. Oh God, there's a bell. Okay.
Great. You have 30 seconds left. You have 30 seconds left.
Yeah. Okay. The Department of Planning and Development receives $387,368,259. The Office of Sustainability is getting 0.05% of planning and development, and the Planning and Development Department is, you know, basically supposed to promote, plan, preserve, and develop successful neighborhoods, but we see a gentrifying catastrophe, homelessness, drug addictions and trade, poverty, despair, gun violence, and basically neighborhoods being colonized by incoming people from New York and California. So now people are talking about warehousing poor people in affordable housing. And as a person that was a youth back in the 60s, I remember urban renewal and the projects, and I just don't think that's the answer. I saw no funding at all for the Philadelphia Energy Authority's Built to Last program, which would keep people in their homes because it helps them repair them. And it streamlines all of the city's repair programs, which are in chaos and have 2- and 3-year waiting lists. Okay. Also, the Planning and Development is in charge of the Historical Commission, and they're just allowing historical architectural masterpieces all over the city to be demolished for some reason, so I don't know what's going on there. I know I'm out of time, so basically, one last thing.
Sure.
The Department of Public Health, the Office of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability, receives over $100 million more than Planning and Development. And I'm not sure what they're doing, but I know that my personal experience trying to help a troubled friend was absolutely awful. They told me to just abandon this person. So I think we need to look at see how the money is being used, not just give the money and walk away.
Oh.
And I'm wondering whether anyone in council is interested in organizing the public, teaching the public how to look at a budget this summer, so that by next year there's more, you know, people are more, they're interacting before it ever happens.
Sure.
That's the summary.
All right, thank you. We have your number. We'll reach out to you, and we can have some about that. Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
The next witness is Katia Perez.
Good evening. Just state your name for the record, and please proceed with your testimony.
Yes, hello. Hello, members of City Council. My name is Katia Perez, and I am an organizer with Reclaim Philadelphia.
Please proceed. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Just proceed with your
Okay.
testimony.
My name is Katia Perez, and I am an organizer with Reclaim Philadelphia. I'm here today to ask that City Council vote against Mayor Kenny's proposed budget and against any co-responder program for emergency services. Philadelphia needs a fully funded mobile crisis program that is completely separate from the police department. Co-responder programs are not the answer because there are way too many Black, brown, and poor people, myself included, who will not call emergency services if a loved one is experiencing a mental health crisis out of fear that the police will only make things worse. This fear is not unfounded. Last year, on May 4th, 2020, I found myself in a situation where my then partner was experiencing a mental health crisis at Broad Street and the residential neighborhood near Temple University. In a fit of rage, as he sped past stop signs, drove on the sidewalk, and narrowly avoided the numerous children playing in the street. I wasn't sure I was going to make it out alive or that someone wasn't going to end up getting killed. We encountered 2 cops on that day, and both were disinterested and did nothing to intervene. I remember frantically calling different emergency services, but there was no one that could help. I was simply told to call the police. Months later, when Walter Wallace was shot and killed by the Philadelphia police, I lamented the predicament his family found themselves in when they called emergency services. The police do not keep us safe. The police are not mental health experts. The police are not the solution. I share my story with you today because I know it is only one out of the hundreds or even thousands experienced by the residents of Philadelphia due to the lack of investment in mental health services. In the poorest big city in the country and the most incarcerated big city in the country, trauma and mental illness are prevalent. I am asking that you vote against Mayor Kenny's proposed tax break to corporations and rollback to the wage tax, and instead put forth a people's budget that fully funds a mobile crisis program that is run completely separate from the police department. We need care, not cops. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it.
The next witness is Julia Lyon.
Good evening. Just state your name for the record, and please proceed.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony, please.
Hello and good evening, council members. My name is Julia Lyon. I am a social worker, a therapist, and I work for the School District of Philadelphia. I'm also a member of the Treatment Not Trauma Coalition, and I'm here to talk to you, as well as many others have, about how we can honor the memory of Walter Wallace Jr. and curb the completely preventable deaths of Black and brown and indigenous people in our city. We know that cops responding to mental health emergencies do not work. We have decades of research to show that it does not work. I have personal experience as a family-based clinician responding to crises myself to know that it does not work. Police presence is always an escalation to any crisis, and police are trained in a military style that makes it very difficult for them to do anything else than perceive bodies, particularly Black and brown bodies, as threats. This is due to racialized trauma that is deep within all of us and cannot be overturned or erased by a 2-week training or an equity initiative. There are many capable, wonderful mental health professionals and peer specialists in this city who are ready to answer the call to respond and de-escalate people in need. Some may say this program won't work in Philly because it's too big. That's a lie. Some may say it's too hard or too expensive. It's actually cheaper than police. This has to happen. We have to protect and promote the welfare of our most vulnerable people and allow people to have a response that is on-site, on-demand, de-escalation and mental health assessment. There is currently only one mobile crisis team working in this city. That is like having one ambulance in the whole city to serve a city as large as Philadelphia. Please do not support a co-responder model and properly fund DBH's initiative for expanded mobile crisis. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it.
The next witness is Reverend Jeanette Davis.
Good evening. Just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Council President Clark and council members. My name is Reverend Jeanette Davis, and I am a member of the Black Clergy of Philadelphia and Vicinity's Criminal Justice Reform Gun Violence Prevention Committee. I want to be very transparent and very brief. So racism is no longer hidden, it's active and prevalent, and it's being revealed more now during the pandemic. It's showing how our black and brown communities and children are undervalued. It shows the racial disparities between Northeast Philadelphia and North Philly, in particular when we talk about parks and recreation. Also, I would like to, I'm trying to get this through very quickly. I'd also like to encourage you to convince Mayor Kenney for his approval of the $100 million proposal for anti-violence, gun violence programs and grassroots organizations. So I want to piggyback on the parks and recreations. So there are a couple of requests. I don't know how familiar you are with some of the centers and how they need to be maintained, but we had the opportunity to visit one the other day, Waterview, and we were outraged. So we're asking for there to be an increase in the capital budget and the operational budget and funding allocated to address emergency repairs per each recreation center and to ensure the health and safety of our children attending those programs. There's a 40 to 50% of rec centers that are in despair. So we're asking for there to be a revisal, restructure or amended policies so that the process would be more expedient to have these maintenance issues repaired and completed in a timely fashion. We're also asking for there to be a mandate that every recreation center be required to do a yearly inspection or assessment on maintenance issues by the health and safety director. We're also asking for each rec center to be adequately staffed with 4 to 5 full-time employees per 20,000 square foot and 3 part-time employees. We're also asking for there to be an increase in law enforcement presence at these rec centers for the safety of their staff and the children. There could be plainclothes officers or beat officers. We want there to be create or revise an advisory board for each center, depending on their level of accountability. And we're also requesting for there to be cameras to be installed at every recreation center. So I do thank you for your time, for allowing me to speak, and I would definitely like to, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Councilwoman Cindy Bass for her expedient response to the Waterview Recreation Center and her generous donation to have that center rebuilt. So I thank you much, and I look forward to connecting with council in the near future.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony. We appreciate it.
Thank
Point of information, Council President.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out, I want to thank the previous caller for her call, and I also wanted to make sure she knew that we have allocated funding for cameras for every rec center and playground in the city of Philadelphia. So all of the 8th district centers are done, and most throughout the city. There's a small percentage that have not had their cameras installed yet, but they are in the design phase. So probably within the next 6 months to a year, I think all of them should be completed. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman, and thank you for pushing that effort years ago. I remember you were on point, and you twisted our arms and made us put our ITF money in there to support that program. I remember that. Thank you. Mr. McDermott?
There are no additional witnesses, Council President.
We were not able to get Ms. Benetek back? Yeah.
No, sir.
Thank you. A friend of mine wanted to make sure she got a chance to testify. All right. Well, if there are no other questions by members of council, the committee will stand in recess until Monday, May 10th at 9:30 a.m., at which time we will reconvene on Microsoft Teams. I want to thank you all very much, and as always, be safe. Thank you. See you guys in the morning.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, colleagues.